mid-80s, action games were becoming the industry's leading genre, with several releases that started new franchises that would live on for decades. Most of them involved laying on the lead until everyone who wasn't you was dead. Subtlety was not in a player's vocabulary. It was a formula that sold lots and lots of cartridges, providing little reason to change it, and it would take a brave visionary to break the mold. "23-year-old Hideo Kojima joined the MSX division of Konami in 1986. With his limited knowledge of programming, he was not the most adept employee. Kojima assistant-directed Penguin Adventure, the rousing sequel to 1983's Antarctic Adventure. He also wrote and directed an action platformer he dubbed Lost World, a title that combined the words war and world. Like many of Hideo's early ideas, World was tossed out by his superiors. Kojima's last chance to save his job was a war-inspired shoot-'em-up for the MSX2, the same computer line that introduced Konami's Bomberman in 1983. His pitch was initially hard for Konami executives to get excited about. Instead of having gamers charge forward, guns blazing, the game would encourage them to hide. It felt backwards, but Konami gambled on Kojima's vision and released Metal Gear on July 12, 1987. With just bare knuckles and a pack of smokes, players had to guide Foxhound Special Ops soldier Solid Snake through a heavily guarded installation called Outer Heaven, located 200 kilometers north of the fictional South African country of Galsburg. Snake's memorable visage on the game's box art was referenced directly from publicity photos of actor Michael Biehn in James Cameron's Terminator. Snake's mission was named Operation Intrude N313, following N312, an earlier botched attempt to infiltrate the compound by an operative known as Gray Fox. Gray's last communication contained only 2 words: Metal Gear. Taking commands from an officer called Big Boss, Snake had to break in, rescue Fox and other hostages, and uncover Outer Heaven's secret project. Sneaking or shooting past screen after screen, Snake could retrieve 7 weapons and 16 pieces of equipment, along with 8 levels of security pass cards. Items could help Snake breathe underwater, light up dark places, disguise himself as the enemy, hunt for landmines, or spy on adjacent screens. Some items magically regenerated after leaving the room, allowing Snake to keep coming and going if his stock needed replenishing. Unfortunately, the guards regenerated as well. If players navigated outside of an insurgent's direct line of sight, they could conserve ammunition. Gas-filled corridors, security cameras, breakaway traps, hidden doorways, electric floors, and infrared lasers also served as deterrents. And if an alarm was triggered, the base's defenses would rush the area. 1 exclamation mark above a guard's head meant you could slip away to safety on another screen, but if they flashed 2, you had to escape to another floor or clear the opposition. Bosses, on the other hand, like Shotmaker, Machine Gun Kid, Fire Trooper, and Dirty Duck, were unavoidable adversaries. Hostages relayed tips and useful intel once you untied them, and releasing 5 boosted your rank or class, increasing your maximum health and allowing you to carry more ammo. Discovering Gray Fox gave Snake his real objective: stopping Metal Gear. The walking tank was capable of launching a nuclear assault from any position on the planet, and it was moments away from becoming operational. The weapon's creator, Dr. Drago Petrovich Modnar, was also being held against his will, along with his daughter, Ellen. She was kidnapped to force the robotics engineer to build the bipedal mech. Unable to reach Metal Gear's hangar by himself, Snake received assistance via his radio transceiver by resistance fighters named Diane, Jennifer, and Schneider. They could be contacted, along with CO Big Boss, on a specific frequency that some characters changed in the course of the mission. Big Boss warned you of incoming hazards, Diane presented strategies for different bosses, Jennifer pointed you towards key items, and Schneider almost revealed the identity of Outer Heaven's leader before being cut off. Against all odds, Snake survived to face off against Metal Gear, using a strategy suggested by Dr. Petrovich. The tank's destruction began the base's self-destruct sequence, but the exit was blocked. Unmasking himself as the mastermind behind Outer Heaven, Big Boss appeared in person and confronted Snake. The boss planned to use Snake to keep US officials misinformed, in hopes the rookie would quickly fall into enemy hands. After a few strategically placed rockets, Snake proved he was up to the task. As the clock ticked down, the seemingly innocuous pack of cigarettes could be smoked to buy the player more time. Big Boss was beaten, Metal Gear was disabled, and Outer Heaven went up in smoke as Snake escaped on foot. Metal Gear on MSX2 garnered glowing reviews and a loyal following in Japan and Europe, and created the stealth genre as it's known today. This warm reception permitted it to be adjusted for American audiences on the Nintendo Entertainment System. The port, which launched in Japan 5 months later and in the US in June of '88, was not overseen by Kojima, and as a result, several revisions were made. On the MSX, Snake snuck into Outer Heaven grounds through an underwater passage, but on the NES, he dropped in via parachute. It appeared Snake was deployed with 3 other soldiers, but he never reunited with them while on the ground. These alternate insertion points altered the initial buildings and outdoor areas. The standoff with the Hind D helicopter was removed and twin turret gunners were put in its place. Enemy alarms could always be silenced by moving to the next screen. The rooftop flying army no longer hovered, Snake's mug was removed from the transceiver screens, and while Big Boss's post-credit transmission on the MSX2 proved he survived the destruction of Outer Heaven, he was presumed dead on the NES. The climactic battle with Metal Gear was also stripped away, instead forcing Snake to bomb a supercomputer that controlled the Mega Weapon's functions. Kojima was not pleased with the NES version of Metal Gear, stating that the game was too challenging for the wrong reasons. English-speaking gamers also cited numerous spelling snafus, 2 occurring within minutes of starting up the game. Broken grammar and developer concerns had no effect on sales, however, as Metal Gear sold over 1 million copies in North America. The game was again reconfigured for the PC and Commodore 64 in 1990, mobile phones in 2004, the GameCube for the Japanese version of Twin Snakes the same year, and the PS2 for Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence in 2005. Kojima's sneaky idea was a hit on both coasts, but the NES won the popularity contest. Ultra Games, the same publisher responsible for Skate or Die and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, got the go-ahead to create an NES-exclusive sequel to Metal Gear. Having never thought of a sequel to his breakout game, Hideo Kojima was again not involved in the development process. Snake not only came back in 1990, he sought revenge. Snake's Revenge arrived in April and took place 3 years after the incursion of Outer Heaven. A hostile nation that was never disclosed had apparently received the plans for Metal Gear and was mass-producing the WMDs. Operation 747 sent Snake, along with operatives John Turner and Nick Meyer, to again destroy all traces of the secret project. Without Big Boss to back him up, Snake stayed in contact with an unnamed helicopter pilot and returning double agent Jennifer. Snake's transceiver was simplified from the manual frequency input method of the first game. Each contact's face appeared for the first time on the dialogue screen, and the limited list of associates was easily selectable. The radio also had a functioning radar that detected an ally's transmission, but the feature was only required a few times during the course of the mission. Snake ditched his green camouflage for a bright orange jumpsuit. It contrasted just about every environment he explored, making it a questionable fashion choice. But the Foxhound soldier did have an edge the second time around by starting the mission equipped with a pistol and a knife for close-range, one-hit kills. The newly added power armor bulked Snake up for moving heavy objects, and truth gas allowed Snake to question officers for vital hints. Doing so advanced his rank, along with rescuing hostages like before. The shotgun and flare gun were added to the arsenal, but the gas mask, cardboard box, and life-saving cigarettes were removed from Snake's equipment. The most glaring change in gameplay was the inclusion of underground, side-scrolling levels, similar to the view the original game had when using an elevator. These gave Snake the ability to duck and crawl, but most fans wished they hadn't been included. Given that the draw of Metal Gear was finding ways to avoid confrontation, these areas didn't fit the franchise because they forced you to take out every soldier in your path. While the game was riddled with these frustrating interludes, the sequel's environmental diversity was a clear improvement. The road to Metal Gear 2 cut through a forest, a cargo ship, a moving train, a desert base, military buildings connected by a trolley, and a fortified castle. The ready and waiting bosses included a scrimmage line of armored football players, a trio of grenadiers, a bridge-defending tank, and your supposed comrade, John. Snake decommissioned Turner the Spy and discovered Nick dying from fatal wounds. Nick revealed that not only was Jennifer a spy as well, but the entire plan was hatched by the very much alive Big Boss. Kept alive by a cyborg skeletal structure that was oddly bigger than his fleshy exterior, Snake's former CO had to be lured away from the safety of his lair and barraged with landmines that could damage Big Boss's only weak point, the bottom of his feet. Despite her traitorous actions, Snake rescued Jennifer, who pointed him in the direction of Metal Gear 2. Cut off from the machine, Snake had to reroute guided missiles through an air duct, with the launch clock rapidly ticking down. 15 direct hits later, Metal Gear 2 was history, and so was Operation 747. John Turner was deemed MIA, and his record was erased from the Navy archives. Nick Myers was congratulated posthumously by being promoted 3 ranks. Snake's Revenge was, for all US gamers knew, the sequel to 1987's Metal Gear. It had more areas, more weapons, and was a longer operation overall. But even the crew working on it didn't consider it a true continuation of Kojima's groundbreaking work. They were just building on a great idea. In the late 80s, Kojima wrote and directed a cyberpunk adventure called Snatcher, and had put Metal Gear behind him when he bumped into a Snake's Revenge developer on a train in Tokyo. With the eager fans' encouragement, Kojima agreed to continue the series, and the very next day was working on Snake's official return. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake debuted on the MSX2 on July 19, 1990. Hideo invented the Central Asia province of Zanzibar land to set the stage for Operation Intrude F-014. Snake had left Foxhound following N313, and after briefly working for the CIA, he retired into the Canadian wilderness. Foxhound's new leader, Roy Campbell, asked for Snake's assistance in rescuing a scientist pivotal to refueling the world's depleting energy resources. Target, Dr. Keo Marv, went missing after bioengineering a remarkable type of algae called oilix that made more gas for less green. With a stockpile of nuclear weapons, Marv's kidnappers held the entire world hostage. Snake's backup intel was provided by Campbell, survival trainer McDonnell Miller, mercenary strategist George Kassler, undercover CIA agent Holly White, Dr. Marv's bodyguard Natasha Markova, later changed to Gustava Hefner, and animal expert Josef Norden, who eventually became known as Johan Jacobsen. Each contact's face, along with Snake's, was shown during the transceiver conversations, making it easier to figure out who was talking. With twice the people to chat with, the dialogue options increased dramatically from the first official installment. Dr. Petrovich was added to the frequency call list after Snake learned he was again being held by Big Boss against his will, and a mysterious messenger calling himself Snake's #1 fan also offered advice. Sneaking around was much more challenging, as guards gained a 45-degree field of vision and the ability to turn their heads sideways or diagonally. Their patterns weren't limited to a single screen, and they would curiously follow intentional and unintentional noises made by the player. A second alert phase was added in between the original attack and patrol modes that meant even if Snake cleared the first rush of guards, the remaining forces would still be aware of his presence. Snake could still outsmart them by crawling through certain areas like fences, tanks, desks, and air ducts. A 3x3 grid on the right showed adjacent screen enemy locations, as well as mines once the detector was activated. Anyone who threw away the instruction manual felt a pang of regret when they discovered it could decipher tap codes and supply an additional frequency number. Rescuing hostages no longer increased rank. Instead, Snake would get more health and ammo capacity after defeating each boss. The numerous celebrity adversaries that surfaced in Zanzibar land had many of their names changed in subsequent translations. Black Color, who was incorrectly named after the Timothy Zahn novel Black Collar, was switched to Black Ninja. Ultra Vox, referencing the British band Ultra Vox, became the Four Horsemen, and the Predator, alluding to the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, is now known as Jungle Evil. The bosses Red Blaster and Running Man both still go by their original monikers. Black Color, or Ninja, turned out to be Schneider from the first Metal Gear, and now had a first name, Kyle. After being captured, tortured, drugged, and run through a secret NASA project, Kyle joined the organization he originally opposed. Drago Modnar also switched sides, joining the Metal Gear project willingly. After you discovered Dr. Marv had succumbed to extensive torture, Petrovich attacked, and Snake had to put him down. But the biggest betrayal occurred when Snake's #1 fan turned out to be Gray Fox, now piloting a souped-up Metal Gear D. Fox killed Gustava, and after retrieving the Oilix formula, Snake was forced to confront his old friend, buckled inside of his old nemesis. Destroying Metal Gear D caught Snake's supplies on fire, and he was left with only his 2 fists and martial arts experience to defeat Gray Fox in the middle of a live minefield. With Fox immobilized and Metal Gear D demolished, Big Boss challenged an unarmed Solid Snake. Snake proved once again that all you need to save the world is a pack of cigarettes and a lighter by fashioning a flamethrower with an aerosol can and torching Big Boss, this time for good. Holly delivered the Oilix formula to Roy Campbell, and Snake vanished into the wild for a second time. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake usurped Snake's Revenge as the definitive follow-up to the MSX NES original, despite the game only being released in Japan. It was eventually ported to mobile phones in 2004 and finally landed stateside in 2006 as a part of Metal Gear Solid 3's subsistence. The character names were changed to their current versions, frequency numbers were saved in a memory window, and other adjustments were made to reflect the changes the series had undergone in the 16 years since MG2's original release. Whatever version gamers ended up playing, it was clear they were experiencing something different. Metal Gear proved the games didn't have to be rushed, and that level of patience was something fans would have to get used to in the sequels to follow. Join us next week as Metal Gear goes underground, only to resurface as one of the industry's most solid franchises.